The universe has got this principle that you get more of anything when you show you can manage what you've got. So when we can go, and starting with no matter how small the starting point is, when we can start with that, because a lot of people go, oh well, I'll learn about investing or managing money when I've got some. It's the wrong way around. When we can actually set up, even with it's that first $10, $5, how do we manage it? What are the different component parts of my life and my business that I need that money to serve? Understanding what its role is in your life.
You ever see that show Deadliest Catch on TV? That's what I used to do for 7 years. At this point, I had had a life-changing incident, almost losing my life, and now I realize that, you know what? It is time to make this transition. I'm gonna start my own business. Now, I won't say that it wasn't scary. It was. There was a certain amount of fear with that. But
Money Revealed is an exclusive video series where self-made millionaires share their secrets on how they got rich. In this episode, you'll learn how to fix your beliefs around money, structure your business, and build an audience for your brand. These are the lessons that they don't teach you in school about making money. And we've partnered with the series creator Jeff Hayes to bring it to you on my YouTube channel. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Ann Wilson, and I'm the author of The Wealth Chef and the company The Wealth Chef. And through the company, we teach people about money. Actually, not just how to make it, but what to do with it, and then how to make sure that it's sustainable and can actually create wealth, rather than just this endless consuming and breaking the poverty cycle. Money is one of the most important ingredients, I believe, that we have to really live a great life. But it's one of the ones we're least taught about, educators, in terms of what do we actually do with it? What are the different ways that we manage it, combine it with other ingredients to create this outcome? And so the Wealth Chef is all about looking at different recipes. And if you want to learn something new, and I love food, I pick up a recipe book and there's no anxiety or stress about it. I go, okay, what are the ingredients I need? What's the process? Are there other tools I need? And the more I learned on my own money journey that actually about being great with money, creating sustainable wealth, getting out of debt, investing, actually follows a whole key set of steps, which also has specific ingredients, specific processes. And when we can look at it that way, a lot of the anxiety and stress about I'm going to get it wrong can be removed and go, okay, it's just a process I can follow. And the more I do it, the better I'm going to get. And soon I won't even need the recipe. And so using that analogy and really linking it with this ingredient of creating a great life. This aspect of anxiety linked with money is such an important aspect to get away, because this is where also a lot of people can have a lot of money, but they don't necessarily get rid of this anxiety around it. And then that is not really wealth. And for me, the key thing is really about how do we create a relationship and with understanding and knowledge about how money really works, what we can actually do with it, and shift this relationship from being a servant to money, working for the money, to actually being the master to it. And where money can then be a great servant, a great supporter with clear direction, shifts that anxiety, that unknown, that feeling of vulnerability. And this is a huge aspect for a lot of women and around the world. And this is, I think, where we come to true wealth, as opposed to having a large amount of money. This relationship with money is the thing that can create real wealth. And as you said, that whole aspect of how do you stop digging in that hole in debt, which is so key to be able to start climbing out of something. You've got to put the spade down. You've got to stop digging. You're never going to dig your way out of debt. This is where so much the relationship with money, the aspect of wealth is so much, a good 80% is behavioral, emotional, psychological, and you can follow a set of tactics. And that's why a lot of people might try certain things, but unless they really deal with the relationship aspect, the meaning they give to this overwhelm that somehow money can be scary, or the conflict around it. And a lot of it is also about where the focus is. So dealing with those beliefs around money, and beliefs that actually it is possible to change the story. And as woo-woo as that might sound, this really having to believe that there is a different way, that it's not that debt is just the way of the world. There's no point trying a different reality, or for the likes of me, or for those people, maybe for somebody else. But really going, actually, there is a different recipe, there is a different plan, and first believing that, and then from that place going, okay, how do I change it? And coming back to that anxiety issue, you can actually get rid of the anxiety really quickly, not waiting until you're out of debt, but just that empowerment that comes with having a plan. And part of having that plan is having to know actually where you're at. And this is such a big step for so many people, is actually going, okay, you know what? I'm in debt. Get over it. No guilt, no shame. Actually, let's see what I've got. Let's see what the real picture is. Shine that light. And then from that, you can start a plan. And when you've got that in place, then the anxiety goes, because now you're shifting it. You're taking back the control. And clarity is power in almost every aspect. And it's really, and I talk about just shining the light in that dark, scary place. So often we grow up and we see these shadows and these monsters in our own mind. We can make things seem a lot worse than they are. And this can also cause paralysis. So not taking any action and not changing that path. So this is such a key step, is to go, okay, let's just see what my money story is in every aspect. Let's just get it all out on the table, because then you can start doing something about it. But there's a second part of the clarity, is actually the clarity of knowing what it is you're aiming for. And this is one of the reasons why I believe 95% of people never achieve financial freedom. They never actually get onto a path of getting that place where money is actually working for them and supporting them, because they don't know what there is. And this comes back to, we're just financially illiterate. We're not spoken about these things. So there's clarity of where I am now and where I need to be. And then all the strategies and bits and pieces can be put in place. And this 99% place for me is one of the tragedies, I think, but also the huge opportunities, is just with a little bit of financial literacy, just about looking at money and wealth from a different perspective can, in a heartbeat, change a person's reality. But, and this is a big but, it has to require such a mindset shift around the way our entire education system is structured, the way people are not taught about how money really works and what to do with it. So our education system is all designed to teach people to earn an income. And it's about what career you're going to follow, how you're going to keep upskilling yourself. It's all about what more you can earn. But nowhere is going, well, then what? You've brought money in. Now what do you do with it? The only other pattern is taught to consume it so that you stay in this vicious poverty cycle of this churning. But there's this other aspect that we've even now, that model of producing these income earners is now starting to fail, because the whole model of the world. So there's two aspects that I really believe we need to address. One is the front end. How do people bring money into their life? And I'm using that bringing in rather than sort of the earning. And then what do we do with it? Because unless you've got both sides, you never get to that 1% or shift this whole side, because people just stay in the same vicious cycle. So I think the two key parts about finding this balance, finding the recipe around sustainable wealth, the wealth part where, this is starting to shift the mentality, because a lot of people think, if I could just earn more, then my money problems will be solved. Look at the lottery win or the big business that might be sold. But this is not the solution, because it never deals with what do you do with the money. And this is about how do we create something that stays in your life, that can then work for you, and shifting that relationship with money. So that front end, that first part of that solution, is start shifting away from being that education, which is teaching people to serve, to fill a role, again almost being the servant, how to earn money, as opposed to how to make it and bring it in. And really looking at each of us, I believe, we have this greatest business that we can opportunity we have, called the business called our own lives. So I'm, Ann Wilson Inc. And when we can start seeing ourselves from an entrepreneurial side as our business, with our money aspect of our business, the key indicators of what is our own income statement, what comes in, what goes out, do I make a profit each and every month of my life? And then as a result of my money actions, am I ensuring that my net worth is growing, that I actually have assets that can sustain me? So with that shifting mindset, we can then go, okay, from the earnings side, we really think about product value. Whether, even if you're an income earner as a wage earner working for somebody, it's still ultimately a value exchange. And when we can shift to that mindset, to bring it in and then go, okay, how do I magnify that? How do I add more value to the company that employs me or to my customers, those sides? Shifting that mindset. But then once money comes in, now a whole different set of conversations. And this is where the leadership comes in with money and takes away that anxiety, going actually an empowerment, going, I have choice. And when we start understanding money as this unbelievable magical seed, that if it's given the right environment, if it's just given a bit of direction and leadership, it can go on and earn us way more money and wealth than we can ever do it actively. And this is what I find so tragic, is so many people just never taught how to convert a small amount of that money that comes into their life into something that gets to stay in their life and works for them. And so this anxiety around, this is this barbaric recipe that I believe is absolutely barbaric, that so much of our education system is based on, is work really hard, study so you can get a good job, so you can earn. Hopefully you can save a little bit. And at the end of it all, maybe you can live and do some of those things you want to do. And then hopefully you run out before the money does. No wonder there's stress and anxiety around this. And for me, the tragedy is here, again, it comes back to clarity. A lot of people have no idea, again, understanding how money works. So we have this mindset that is also all about, spend less than you earn, live below your means, and save for your retirement so that you don't end up destitute and, feeding bread to the pigeons off a park bench. But the challenge with this is, again, it never teaches people about how to actually convert money into something that can work for us. Saving has a place in a wealth plan, but that is not about creating wealth. And then people look at, earning the interest or this measly side, but wish with a few skills and actually going, how do I convert this into something that truly works for me? Then the anxiety can go, because then we can understand how to get money to be that earner for us. And this, for me, is the tragedy. And there are people who've worked their entire lives, thought that they were following the right recipe, the company 401k, or the side, to find now that either it's not enough, or in most cases, there is enough. But because they don't know what to do with it, to leverage it and get it working, they live in this terrifying scarcity place. Around the world, this whole wealth gap issue is getting more and more airtime, and the differential is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And it is a massive problem, and it needs to be adjusted. I think the problem is so much of the conversation has been around how do we redistribute? How do we rebalance? As though the first premise is that somehow there's a scarce, limited supply, and somehow some naughty people have taken too much of their pie. And that to me is a fundamentally flawed premise. The second premise also comes from the assumption that then that 99% does not have unlimited potential to actually create and expand and bring value. So it's almost this belittling view of, well, let's do some redistribution because you're not from a place of empowerment. I think we've got to fundamentally look at this wealth gap from a completely different direction and look at how are we educating people? How are we actually creating and growing them to be people who can take ownership of their life, create massive value, learn about leveraging money, creating value, and shifting this mindset that actually is, getting a bit woo-woo, but this abundance of opportunity out there, that redistribution doesn't solve any problem. It just keeps manifesting and keeps everybody stuck in that broken side. Rather, lift up and expand. through my company and through my own journey, I've really realized that there's some languaging, some certain behavioral aspects, and some anxieties and fears around money that are magnified in, let's say, the female, the woman sector, magnified by a lot of historical roles again about our education system, our social class structures, our roles of the wife and the husband. And as women, we've made unbelievable progress and advances in a society and with our men in terms of opportunities and so on. And people are making creating amazing businesses and getting involved in careers. I myself studied civil engineering and worked around the world as a civil engineer at the time when there weren't a lot of women doing that, and now more and more so. But one of the tragedies and things that I'm really passionate about, there's still this barrier around the money stuff. There's still it's one of the last big taboos, I believe, about really let's talk about money and what it means to us, and let's just let money come out, and it is damn important. And if we don't go, how do we make sure it can support all aspects of our life? And for women, really, in order to feel confident and secure and stable, is often a much bigger need for women than men necessarily. And so some of the aspects around just recognizing being okay with that being a role that money plays in their life. And some of the conversations around taking away the testosterone-fueled jargon. For example, in investing on the stock market, when women actually do start investing, they are generally often are better investors than men. But there's a barrier because it's often perceived as either this testosterone-fueled zone, or you've got to have a lot of money, or it's got to be something you spend a whole lot of time in, and women go, on top of everything else I'm juggling, how am I going to fit that in? But when we actually realize there are systematic things you can do and embrace and take away that fear of getting it wrong, and actually going, it's actually quite straightforward. So I'm passionate about helping women just shift that relationship with money and get it far more empowered around it. For women entrepreneurs, one of this money aspect and the money side of successful business can be one of the Achilles heels, the side of really allowing them to express and do the great things that they want to do. And I think there are multiple layers to it. But I think one is there's still somehow a little bit of for some people, money's a little bit dirty. Money's, the root of all evil. Or if I am to be seen to be focusing on the money, does that make me selfish or greedy? And I think one of the deep societal conditionings of women is about the nurturer, the carer, the one who looks after the family and their partner and everybody else first. And if we start shifting that relationship, going, and this is such a key thing, I believe, selfish is the new black. And when I share with sort of women entrepreneurs, go, let's shift this side and what we mean by that. Because a lot of women believe almost focusing on their money, managing it, investing it in their own name, on their business, is somehow selfish. But in fact, when we can look after ourselves and truly put on our own oxygen mask, like when you get on the airplane, before you look after the kids, the partner, even the business, the society, the community, then we're in a far better place. Then the business can expand. Then we can contribute more. Then we can express our voice more. And this comes with embracing that money is a vital, vital part to expand all those things. And so shifting this almost feeling guilty around wanting money, having money for ourselves. And so many entrepreneurs that go, they feel that they have to justify why they want this business, so that they can contribute or do other things separate from themselves, which are all great. But it's about enabling, you know what? This is like oxygen. Money is up there with oxygen and water. It's one of the key inputs we need. So get cool with that. And when we can go, okay, it's okay to look at the money stuff. It's okay to bring it in. Then we can de-energize and go, okay, so now let's take it to a next level in the business. I believe every person ultimately wants to contribute and lead a good life and connect and have relationships. And when we can realize that just bringing money in to the relationship isn't like bringing a third person, you're not somehow being unfaithful. There's almost this aspect of infidelity, and I call it sort of financial infidelity, that often happens in relationships, and why money is cited as the number one conflict in most marriages is because there's almost this unspoken about third-party element in the room, and then embarrassment or confusion around how to speak about it, or the role, or almost guilt of going, okay, I want that for myself, but this whole aspect, then I'm being selfish, and going, this story that a lot of women have, that if I sacrifice myself for my kids, my partner, my business, then I will be worthy, and then I can maybe have the money stuff. But because they're then coming from this depleted place, but when we can shift that and go, okay, by being great with the money stuff, by giving it leadership management, allowing it to come in, letting my business thrive, then I can be engaged in my relationship with my partner, my kids, my community, from such a fuller place, is so key. So I think from the entrepreneurial side, and where do we start? I think the first start is to really see each of us as embracing some of these entrepreneurial concepts. And we use this word entrepreneurial in a broad sense, but what does this ultimately mean? It means really recognizing that each of us as an individual, when we can bring into any relationship, how do we create something of value that meets a need of somebody else, that we can have a value exchange, which is then that money exchange. So if we just simplify it right down to that, we can see that each of us can and should be entrepreneurs in every aspect of our life. It doesn't just mean you happen to have a business or something side. So all the way through, when you can keep seeing yourself, how do I add that value, which then can have an exchange in whether it's the car wash system or whether it's some online side or whether it's somebody's pets, then you start looking at your activities and the inputs you have. The key resources that you have to expand that value, if each of us have, we have our time. One of our most precious resources. How do we make the most of that? We have the money we have in our lives. And no matter how small it is, that amount of money, it is a seed. And when we start seeing it as an input, like our time, we can start going, how do we expand that? And then our energy. And we go, these are the three key ingredients we have to work with. So how do we get more and more and more out of that in all aspects of our life, including then bringing more money in? So this is the first key just mindset shift of really recognizing we can produce, we are producers each individually. And then it's going, okay, I need to understand on my money story, both the input and then what I do with this. Because I see so many entrepreneurs creating incredibly successful businesses, and this is great, now the income comes in, but they still broke because they don't deal with this other side. And I believe the universe has got this principle that you get more of anything when you show you can manage what you've got. It's almost like your time. And this is the key with your money. So when we can go, and starting with, no matter how small the starting point is, when we can start with that, because a lot of people go, oh, well, I'll learn about investing or managing money when I've got some. It's the wrong way around. When we can actually set up, even with it's that first $10, $5, how do we manage it? What are the different component parts of my life and my business that I need that money to serve? Understanding what its role is in your life, and then start directing to it. It actually flows through, and it ensures that one of the areas that I call the money flows, and shifting a money flow to actually be a wealth flow, instead of money just flowing straight through your life, in the front door, and we wave it straight out the back door. But through these actions, what we do with it is actually making sure some of that money gets diverted off to this great reservoir and then converted into other assets. So this entrepreneurial side, before it goes out the back door, that cycle is so, so important. So it's looking at those two sides. You know, why it isn't in our education system is a complete mystery to me. And I've, racked my brain on, is there some big conspiracy or side? And I think historically there was an aspect of, we had a society that needed to churn out workers that could meet the production lines, the industrialized set. And I think we just have a legacy of ignorance that has then been perpetuated. And this is why I'm just so passionate trying to shift this, because it's like so many things in life, it's actually quite simple, but simple doesn't necessarily mean it's easy, because it does require quite this fundamental mind shift set. And so let's take just investing in the stock market. And a lot of people go, oh, the stock market, that's not for me, that's for those people who've got lots of money. And I'm going to go, well, actually, let's shift that mindset completely. And a lot of people go, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. But actually, if you think, every single person can and should be an entrepreneur in this thing called My Business Inc., My Life Inc., because if just a small portion of that money that comes in life is actually used to buy and get a slice of somebody else's business, we effectively now are entrepreneurs. So when we talk about the wealth gap and the earnings gap between executives, let's shift that and go, okay, how do we actually rather get the workers, the empowered, to actually start going, I can own a piece of these great businesses around the world and benefit and share in that value and that growth, instead of going, I must be given more. How do I actually own it in a far more empowering way? And we've never had a better time in the history of the universe in terms of accessibility, low cost, to get access to this. But for so many people, if I say the stock market, they go, oh no, that's, all about trading and side, and go, no, just think about it. All you're doing is buying a slice of a great business. That's all you're doing. The stock market is just like your supermarket. It's just where you buy it through. You get to own a piece of those great businesses, get to benefit from their income, their growth, their profit, and you don't have to pitch up for a day's work. That is what is getting your money working for you. And the more we can start thinking about this money flow cycle and going, with just a small tweak, while I'm getting out there and doing great life, earning income actively, be it through a business or through a salary, it doesn't matter, but through these other actions, I now, as the entrepreneur in my life, are getting to have businesses. Then you can add things like investment properties, then other businesses you can create as you go along, as this adventure, as you add to your own product line in your own wealth journey. So if we can just start adding the spark in the education system to go, how do I create these products that work for me in every aspect of my life? I just believe we can transform so many aspects of the impact of poverty around the world. It would have been great to have been born excessively wealthy. But actually, I joke about that, and actually, I'm really glad I wasn't. I'm South African. That's where this funny accent comes from. And I'm number 5 of 6 kids. It was a very average family. Mum was the housewife looking after this horde. Dad was an engineer working damn hard trying to feed this horde. Very much of that cycle, go and work harder. And I wasn't desperately poor, but there were lots of hand-me-down clothes. I never felt deprived. But growing up in South Africa at the height of apartheid, I really got to see some of the impact of injustices around where people are disenfranchised from access to opportunities, the lack of freedom of choice, of ability. And so I started to look at and sort of create beliefs around haves and have-nots. And my own, what I realize now, some pretty dysfunctional money beliefs about if you had money, then it means somebody else mustn't have, and greed and just redistribution, and how do you balance that out? But I feel so privileged that I grew up in that time. But like most people, the only recipe I was taught was study hard, hopefully get a good job, and so I thought I'd better do that. And so I decided to study civil engineering. And my father died when I was in my early 20s. And I got to see my mum incredibly stressed and anxious, not only losing her husband, but for the first time, having to deal with the money stuff. You see, Dad had just always handled that stuff. And suddenly to see this woman who was so capable in so many areas, unbelievably vulnerable, feeling anxious around this area, I can distinctly remember I'm never going to want to be that vulnerable. And I looked at some of my mum's friends and I realized there was a pattern here. These were intelligent women, but because of some societal aspect, there was this whole skill set that they knew nothing, had no idea how to deal with this key ingredient in life. But I didn't know any different from the recipe, but it did start a trigger that actually I never want to be in that place. So a search and a yearning. But I continued on the recipe. So I got my first job as a civil engineer and it was fantastic. I thought I've got this money stuff sussed because money was everywhere. I had the student loan, then I got the car loan because I had to have all these things a new young professional had. And I was told, don't worry, the money will still be coming. You can pay for it later. And I honestly believed that was just what you did. I believed that was the way the world worked. And so by my late 20s, I found myself in a big debt hole. And again, I just feel so grateful for that seed because I started feeling that anxiety, this vulnerability of going, I can't actually do a lot of the things I want to do. I feel like my choices are being narrowed down and I'm starting to feel very vulnerable because I'm trapped into this. I need to keep that job. I need to keep earning this because if I don't, I'm in big dwang, in big doo-doo because of this having to feed this monster I'd now created. And I went, whoa, this is the very vulnerability I said I never want to feel, so let me do something about it. And that really started my journey to go, okay, I must be able to learn about this. And so books and journeys, and I managed to find some debt strategies, getting really clear about where I was, dug myself out of that debt hole, and really realized, nothing is ever forever. We can make some real decisions to shift a pattern and get back. And so I got myself out of debt, and suddenly I felt that, wow, I've got choice again. And so I decided to go and travel around the world, and I ended up for the next 15 years living all over the world, starting off in Hong Kong. But I swung from what had almost been a money binging, spending more than I had, this sugar sort of craving, how do I have more, thinking success was the stuff that people would see. And then through getting out of debt, I went, okay, I think I've now got the solution. It's about how can I live on as little as I possibly can, save some of that, and hopefully at the end of it all, I can then do the things I want. So I swung from this money binging to this money anorexia. And still my relationship with money was completely dysfunctional. It was still fear-based. It was still anxious-based. It was more like, okay, I'll hold on to it. And so anything that could happen happened. A big money drama blew up, and my young marriage at the time blew up as well around this thing called money and conflict and stress around how we should handle it, different money values. And I was living in Hong Kong. I didn't really know anyone. The money and the marriage walked out the door at the same time. I went, okay, I've got something more to still learn here again. So starting from zero again, so luckily not negative this time, but zero, I went, okay, this is a journey. And I really went, there must be a place where I can have the money, I can bring it in, I can feel confident and secure and certain and know that I'm creating that pot, that thing that can look after me. But surely it's also about living life now. And for that, and the things I want to do and achieve, money is a key part of it. So there must be a recipe, there must be a way that I can do this. And I really started that search. And just really with a hunger for this and determined to also just live a great life, I started doing that and changing, looking at my beliefs around money, the relationship, and then actually the technical side, going, okay, let me find out about and learn the difference between investing and saving. They're fundamentally different things, but I hadn't been taught that. And from that day in Hong Kong, it took me just over 8 years to achieve my own financial freedom, which is the point where I then had enough assets, these things that could work for me, that I could choose to work actively or not. And I continued to still work as an engineer because I loved the big projects. But then I got to a point that I just felt so grateful for what I'd managed to learn and experience through this, and still seeing this issue for so many other women out there, successful in so many areas, but this dysfunctional side, that's when I created The Wealth Chef and started this business and just around the world get to teach people how to change that pattern in their own life. South Africa is very much my soul home, and I'm still very connected to South Africa and travel there often and have a home there. And I'm very passionate about working on this whole money and wealth paradigm in Southern Africa and Africa as a whole, because to me, one of the huge tragedies is we've come so far as a nation, leading in unbelievable ways of liberation through shaking off apartheid. South Africa has just gone through its 20th anniversary of free and fair elections, of universal franchise, of freedom of choice. And so in so many other aspects of opportunity and that empowerment, but this whole area around money and wealth is just still in a dark corner, and we're almost still sitting in a pre-industrial revolution kind of mindset, shifting at the moment, going, okay, the solution is this redistribution of wealth, or let's nationalize industries because that is the only way to uplift the poor or give people opportunity. And the challenge is this will never break the cycle. It's not the solution because it doesn't come from a place of actually empowering individuals, in actually giving people the tools to not just, that old adage, teach a person to fish and they can feed for a lifetime. I'm going, let's take that next further. Teach a person how to create the fish farm that keeps producing the fish, and then they can go off and create another fish farm and another fish farm. And there are sparks of it happening in South Africa, and there's some incredible organizations. One is a Small Enterprise Foundation, which I support through my business, who uses microloans, these seed loans, this little seed of money, but combined with education, combined with financial literacy. And we're not talking about fancy education. These microloans are given to women who 99% of them are illiterate and innumerate. So let's remove away the barrier that you've got to be, money's complicated and it's all about maths. No, it's about this understanding, this ingredient. And through this, of creating businesses which are not only supporting and sustaining them, but revolutionizing and transforming their communities. But the challenge is it's just a seed, it's just a trickle at the moment, and we need to create this more and more on the mainstream by bringing this kind of education into the education system, the mindset, because the later and later we leave it, people get locked into this mentality of this wage earning mentality of almost this victim. And we've got this, in South Africa there's still this trapped in that old recipe that it's now going to be about education and getting a profession. So the whole push is more universities, more colleges, more degrees. I love studying, I'm a lifetime learner, but if we think that that is the solution, and this is the tragedy, we are ending up with a higher and higher youth unemployment rate of people popping out of these colleges and universities unemployable. Because not only is there not a skill, but they've never been taught how to actually bring value from within themselves. And that confidence and that self-esteem and that worth and that creativity to expand rather than just being in a receiving chain of this industrial side. And I feel so privileged being able to see the contrast, because I get to spend time in South Africa and see this, and then yet I live in Paris, where you've got almost this other extreme of down the Champs-Élysées and in areas Place de Vauzage, the high-end, incredible boutiques and the money all over. Yet, interestingly enough, in Europe, there are also some of these same mindsets and barriers that also are keeping people trapped into a certain unsustainable path that where our society is going. We're looking at this crisis, the credit crisis that we've been going through for the last 5-6 years, and what is still happening in Europe, the stagnation of this value side, where we've almost got, where people have given this trade-off to say, I will give away some of my freedom of choice. I'll give away some of my self-determination, and I will play a role in this industrial machine for you, government, to then, it is then your responsibility to look after my financial well-being, my old age. And this for me, this disempowered aspect of that exchange really inhibits and stops people's creativity of being able to expand more. And so much of the creativity that came from Europe's post the big world wars and the things that expanded has all been dampened down to this lowest common denominator and this exchange. And I think until we shift back to going, come back to the individual taking personal responsibility for their own financial well-being, and then from that place believing that, yeah, I am a powerful creative being that can do this, I think we're just going to see this decline and this stagnation continue. You know, this fear of living longer than the money, you know, hoping that we will run out before the pot does, to me is so desperately sad, because it doesn't have to be that way. With the simplest shift, we can expand that and create this whole ability for people to live a rich, juicy life each and every day, feeling supported by their money. Not this, and this is this shifting relationship between money being this almost overwhelming thing that we have to serve, versus really seeing money's role is to be this thing that feeds this juicy life. And again, this is just simple lack of understanding that money, when we understand it, money wants to work. It's phenomenal. Money really wants to work and work for us. But because we just don't know how to make that happen, or fear of getting it wrong, this perpetual, and the tragedy at the end of a life where these golden years should be of joy and abundance and freedom, can feel so restricted about, you know, how do I make sure it lasts? But with just shifting and a little bit of education, we can make that big difference. And I think, you know, our financial planning industry, our banking industries, I get very frustrated, because I think there's a lot of fear-based products and marketing and selling that perpetuates into this fear, and then it results in people feeling that this is complicated, that it's something that they can't do, almost that patronizing, you know, don't worry your little pretty head, because you might get it all wrong and then you will be starving and living on food coupons. So trust me. And listen, there's a lot of great financial planners out there, but an industry as a whole, I think, has been very disempowering, because people have then ended up what I call TV dinner money cooks. They've gone out of incredibly trusting, and from an anxious base, really trusted somebody to advise them, put in place something that they don't have to worry about their money running out before they do. But they've actually been sold stuff that makes somebody else rich and not them. And these costs around so many of these products. But actually, and this is where I come back to the analogy of cooking, this is like every single meal of your life going to a restaurant. That costs a lot, and it's not going to be joyful, but actually it's not hard to whip up a fantastic juicy feast in your own kitchen if you just know a few of the key parts, and you get more of the money working for you. So this is about, let's just change that relationship, realize it's not so complex and scary, and that no matter what age, so even if you're like your mom, you know, already in your retirement phase, to start shifting and going, wow, I can actually compartmentalize what I've got. Some of its role is to grow, some of it's to look after me. And then we can go, okay, I've got more clarity now. I can, you know, I'm directing money to meet all of these needs, and actually go, I can let go of that, and now let me go and have fun, because that's what we're meant to be doing.
Kevin Thompson, and for the last 10 years I have been showing entrepreneurs how to structure their business better so that it fits in with the life that they really want to live, and how to use technology, how to tap into their already existing strengths, abilities, passions, experiences, and use that as the basis of their business so that they can have a big impact on the people they serve. I started my first business back in 1996. I opened the doors on my first business. And at that time in my life, I started a carpet cleaning business because I had met this guy in Seattle, which is where I live. He was in the carpet cleaning industry. He had a carpet cleaning business. He made a lot of money. He was less than ethical. And I thought, well, gosh, if that guy can do it, then so can I. So that was my whole reasoning for getting in the carpet cleaning business. I thought I could make a lot of money doing this thing I was going to set out to do, which was carpet cleaning. Didn't know the first thing about business, didn't know the first thing about marketing, didn't know anything, but I had saved up a lot of money from my 7 years previous working as an Alaska fisherman. Put $80,000 into that business just to open the doors on it. Over the next year, spent about another $120,000, gone through all the money that I'd saved up, still was not making a profit. And finally, I met a gentleman. I found an ad in a trade publication for the industry, for the cleaning industry. And this guy was working with cleaning and restoration professionals and showing them how to better market their business to get better results. I'm like, gosh, I need some help. So last ditch effort, let me reach out to this guy and see if I can get some help. And long story short, he did help me. Helped me turn that business around with what he taught me. And within 3 years, by 1999, I was at the top 3% in that industry. What I discovered was that even though I was a success by everybody else's standards in that industry, I did not feel like a success because I was working my tail off. I was working 12 to 14 hours a day. I was doing this 6 and 7 days a week. And I was like, this is not what I want for myself. And I was like, is this all I have to look forward to? Is this my life? Is this, and making a great income, but having no time to enjoy it, having no time for my family, for my children, for my wife. I was sitting in the office one day on a Sunday. It had been a crazy month. It was very busy, profitable, but here I was in my office on a Sunday, going over the books for the month, and realizing that, like, wow, I'm not with my family. You should be with your family right now, for crying out loud. Not here doing this. And at that point in time, until then, I'd never even really given it any thought as far as what I wanted from life, what I wanted from my business, other than as I shared, when I originally got into business, I just wanted to make a lot of money. And for the first time ever, I took out a piece of paper and I sat at my desk and I'm like, what in the heck do you want? And I just wrote down a few things. One of the things I wanted was that I didn't want to be working over 40 hours a week. I didn't want to be working on weekends. I wanted a business that gave me a whole lot more satisfaction from doing what I did. I didn't want to make a profit, obviously. I wanted to live the life of a millionaire. I wanted to be able to have that financial freedom. And now that I had this list, I was like, what do I do? And I still didn't know what to do, but at least now, for the first time ever, I had a list and I was gaining some clarity on what the heck I even wanted. And so at 19, that was 1999, I had ended up going to another seminar that year. It was this guy, Dan Kennedy, was putting on this seminar down in Phoenix, Arizona. I went to this event, and at that event, I met two guys. One guy by the name of Yannick Silver, and another gentleman by the name of Perry Marshall. And those two guys at that point in their life were using technology, using the internet, doing some pretty cool things. But what I really found incredible about these two guys is that they had such a passion for doing what they were doing. And yeah, they were making a great income doing it, but it was as if the income was the byproduct of doing what they were doing, that they were so excited about, so passionate about. And I was like, I want that passion for me. And so I went home from that event. I actually got those two guys' contact information so I could stay in touch, follow up with them. And I started playing around on the internet. And what I ended up doing was I took my knowledge of the cleaning industry. I started doing a little bit of research like they showed me how to do. And I discovered that there was a whole lot of people online actively looking for information on how to deal with a mold problem in their home. Now, for most people, the subject of mold is not an exciting topic. It's not something that gets everybody fired up, But if you've got a mold problem in your home and you're concerned about that, you want somebody that can help you. And I ended up putting up this website in 2000 called getmoldsolutions.com. And all I did was draw from my experiences that I already had in this other business, and I started offering assistance to people who had a mold problem in their home. And within about 10 months, that website was producing between $10,000 and $12,000 a month in revenue for me. And in 2002, the gentleman that I met, Joe Polish, that helped me turn my cleaning business around, he would host this annual seminar for the cleaning and restoration professional. He would host this down in Phoenix every year in October. And that year he invited me, found out what I was doing online, and he's like, hey Kev, why don't you come down here and speak at my seminar and share with everybody what you're doing? And I'm like, all right, that sounds great. And so I got on stage at that 3-day event that he hosted, and I just shared what I was doing. And I was actually a little bit nervous because I'd never spoken in front of a group of 500 people before. But once I got on stage and got over that initial shock of being in front of this large audience, I got so into what I was sharing and was so excited just to share with everybody. And when I finished my presentation and got off that stage, I was mobbed at the back of the room by people wanting me to help them. And they wanted to use technology. They wanted to set up a website for their business. And at that point in time, I didn't even have anything to offer. But Joe pulled me aside and he's like, Kevin, he's like, you need to document what you're doing, and I'm going to invite you back next year, and I'm going to let you speak here again, and you're going to give these people what they want from you. You're going to start offering your assistance to all these people. And so that's exactly what we did. Next year in 2003, I went back to his seminar and spoke again. It was an incredible experience. I just so enjoyed sharing with everybody. And this time we had something to offer. We made $35,000 in sales. And I had never made, so I spoke for about 60 minutes, let everybody know what I had to offer, and a certain number of them thought it was a right fit for them, invested in what I was offering, $35,000 in sales, and I'm like, wow, I have never made $35,000 in about 60 minutes prior to that point. But I was like, here is something that is really powerful, and I want to get better at this. And so that's when we started making the transition. And now we go back to that list that I made in 1999, 4 years earlier, and I'm starting to see where this is all coming together. Because now I discovered, by working with these clients that had invested in what I had to offer, and now I started an ongoing relationship with them, helping them, providing my insight and what I knew and applying it to their businesses and what they were wanting to achieve. What I discovered was that I really enjoyed helping these people and working with them in this way. And I was like, wow, I want to do a whole lot more of this. So I began focusing on doing more of that and starting to expand that message, reaching out to people that I could help in that way. And on April 19th of 2004, I sold the carpet cleaning business and we moved into this full time, and I've been doing this ever since. But when we go back to that list, I started to look at that and realize that, wow, now that I had made this list and got some clarity around what I was wanting to do, now all of this was starting to transform. It was starting to manifest itself in my life. And I was beginning to have a whole lot more fun doing this. And this whole idea of taking your passions, taking your unique abilities that every one of us already possess, and figure out how I can use that, how I can be my authentic self, just the person that I am, complete with my gifts and my talents, but also complete with the things that I lack, the things that I'm not good at, and realizing that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just who I am, and figuring out how I can provide value to people in the way that only I can, in the unique way that only I can. And we've been doing that ever since. And as I've continued to just do what I do and realize that I don't have to have all the pieces of the puzzle figured out. I don't have to have all the answers, but just continuing to move in this direction and just respond to people, listen to them, listen to their concerns, listen to their goals, their dreams, their aspirations, and that's the big thing, is listen, so that I can then, as I'm listening, I'm processing okay, how can I best help this person? And by providing such incredible value to them, in that way, I have been able to in turn get compensated extremely well for doing what I do. And the more I figure out, the more I'm able to use technology and apply that to be able to help the masses, more and more people, because that's how wealth is actually created, is by providing value to more people. And we need to be able to leverage our efforts so that we can do that. We certainly can't do that one-on-one because we're capped by time. But when we can leverage our efforts and put things in place, whether it's audios, videos, whatever we can put in place, so that now people can get a piece of us without us actually having to physically be there and be present in that moment, but they can still learn from us, they can get value from us. Now we're able to leverage our efforts, and the more we can do that, the more we can help more people, the more we end up getting compensated. And quite honestly, to that, there is no cap. Just only in our ability to get better at using technology, to get better at providing value. So the wealth gap between the haves and the have-nots. I've been there. And it's I guess from a very young age, my dad, he used to be a high school teacher. And at some point when I was very young, he switched over and wanted to take control of his own life. He didn't like the fact, he liked doing what he did, but what he didn't like was that somebody else was determining how much he was worth. So he switched careers and became a real estate agent, got very good at doing what he did, and then therefore in turn was able to have much more control over his income, and he decided what he was worth. And the challenge is that most people don't realize that we are in complete control. There's nobody else that decides what we're worth. You know, this whole idea of, you know, we're taught to do good in school, get good grades in school, so that we can then in turn get into a good college, so that we can then in turn get a good education from that to go out there and get a good job. And this has been taught for years. And the challenge is, like, if we really look around, that model's broken. That model is not working. And we see it all around us, but yet it's still being taught. I mean, I have a daughter in college right now, and she's definitely my entrepreneur, and she kind of gets in arguments with her business professor because her professor is telling her certain things about business, and this is the way things are done, and she's thinking to herself, well, my dad would never do that. And when we first began talking about this, and my daughter was asking me about this, I was like, honey, is your professor, is he ever owned a business? She goes, I don't know. I'm like, you know, I'd be curious to find out. And we come to find out that no, he has never owned a business. He has worked in corporate America. He's been involved in corporations, but he's never owned a business for himself. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that being said, he's not coming from the point of somebody who is an entrepreneur who takes control of their own life. He's coming from a point of and having the experience of worked inside another business, or inside another corporation, another business. And the challenge is that most people, because this has been taught for so long, that's become the norm. And so that's the path that most people follow. As parents, we tell our kids, you got to do good in school, you got to do this. And the challenge is that for so many of us, that just doesn't work. I was terrible in school. And I had to work really hard just to pull C's and B's. I hardly ever got A's. But yet, what I discovered, for me, quite honestly, the way of learning, I'm terrible at sitting in a classroom, studying material and trying to memorize it so that I can then pass the test and get a good grade, because my mind just simply doesn't work that way. And as a child in school, when this is the curriculum, this is what you're supposed to do, and if you can't do this, if you can't keep up, then you kind of feel like a failure because, well, there must be something wrong with me because I can't do this. There's other kids doing it, but I can't do this. And the reality is that every one of us are different. Every one of us learn differently, and so, but we're being pushed into this mold that it needs to be done this way. And like I said, that model is not working, and there's proof of this all around us. And at some point, I knew I was different. just because I was having such a challenge in school, in my high school years and stuff. And my father passed away when I was 16, and I was planning to go to college. I was planning to do that, but once my mom became the sole income earner for our family, that just wasn't happening. And so I had to figure out what I was going to do, because my mom wasn't going to provide the income for me to go to school. I ended up, I was joined the Army for 4 years while I was trying to figure it out what I wanted to do. And actually when I got out of the Army, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, because I knew that something was different. I mean, even being in the Army, it certainly didn't feel bad because I served my country, but I also learned that, you know what, something is different about me. I am not cut out to be an employee. I'm not cut out to work for somebody else. So many people in America feel this way, that something just isn't right, but yet we've been taught to do this. And so I realized that, and I'm like, okay, I've got to do something different, something that I'm going to feel good about. And so for me, I knew that I wanted to become a business owner, because that way I could take control of my own life. I was gonna, I suppose, buck the system, if you will. And I said, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to continue going and learning in a way that just isn't working for me. I'm going to do it in a different way. And even when I was young, getting out of the Army, I did figure out that I needed to become a business owner and take control of my own life. So what I thought is like, well, you need money to start a business. So I was talking with a good friend of mine, trying to figure out, okay, how do I get money together? How do I get money together? And we live up in Seattle. My friend, he gives me this great advice. He's like, Kevin, if you want to make a bunch of money, go down to Seattle, go to Fisherman's Terminal, get yourself a job on one of those fishing boats that go up to Alaska, because those guys make all kinds of money. And I'm like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to do that. That's exactly what I did. I went down to Fisherman's Terminal. I started hitting those docks. I started talking with those skippers, those captains on the fishing boats, and got myself a job on one of those fishing boats. And I spent the next 7 years of my life doing that. You ever see that show Deadliest Catch on TV? That's what I used to do for 7 years, from 1988 until 1995. And I did it with the sole purpose of saving up money so that I could start my own business. And even though that was the most grueling job I have ever worked in my life, it was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we worked out of Dutch Harbor up in Alaska primarily, and we would fish out in Alaska's Bering Sea. And we would deal with this insane weather. Most of the time, the weather is pouring down rain. If it wasn't raining, it was snowing. It was just freezing temperatures, high seas in a lot of the cases, where you're dealing with 20, 30, 40-foot waves. This boat rocking and rolling underneath you. Half your day is just spent trying to figure out how to stay on your feet and move around as this boat is rolling around underneath you. And we would work anywhere from 24 to 36 hours straight. We'd sleep for 6 hours, we'd get up and we'd do it again. And we would work that kind of pace on a good trip. We could fill that boat in about 2 weeks. On a bad trip, if we weren't catching that much, I've been out at sea working under those kind of conditions, working those kind of hours for almost 2 months straight before. And so after a few years of this, it definitely starts to take its toll on you. And it was definitely taking its toll on me. And in 1995, that particular winter had been really, really bad up in Alaska. I lost a couple of my friends that year in fishing accidents. And on this particular night, we were in one heck of a storm. And and quite honestly, I was scared. I've been in many storms before, but not quite this big. And I was out working on the rail. We were getting the catch on. And the way I would actually deal with my own fear is to not look out at the horizon. You know, I would just concentrate on my job, which is to get the catch onto the boat. So we're doing that. And I let the skipper up in the wheelhouse. He keeps an eye on the big picture. He'll let you know if you're in any real danger. I'm working the rail, and all of a sudden I hear his thundering voice over the intercom system. And he's like, "Kevin, duck." And before I could even react, we got hit broadside with this huge wall of water that picked me up like I was nothing, like I was a toothpick, and it hurled me face first all the way across the boat into the railing on the other side. And in fact, that's what this scar is from. And my front teeth got knocked out. These teeth are now filled in. But when the water finally subsided, all I could even think was, thank God that I'm still on this boat. Because in a storm like that, if I would have been thrown overboard, that would have been it. That would have been it. I mean, there's no way the skipper would have got that boat turned around in time. So I made up my mind right then and there that I was through fishing in Alaska. And I realized I've saved up enough money. Let's make this transition. Now, that was a huge turning point in my life because, this was something that I'd been working towards. And quite honestly, knowing what I know now, I probably could have forgone the 7 years of fishing in Alaska because I had these ideas that, like, if you want, in order to do this, and a lot of people, a lot of people in this country, they have this desire to do something more. They have this desire to have their own business. They have this, desire to be in control of their own financial future, to be able to be in control of their own decisions and take responsibility for themselves rather than trying to give some responsibility over to somebody else, an employer or whoever that is. And people want this, but they just don't know how to go about doing it. And there's also that fear, if you will, of the unknown, of making that transition. And at this point, I had had a life-changing incident, almost losing my life. And now I realize that, it is time to make this transition. I'm through working on this fishing boat. I'm going to start my own business. Now, I won't say that it wasn't scary. It was. There was a certain amount of fear with that. But in that moment, as soon as I went from working for someone else to now deciding, okay, I am going to work for myself. I'm going to be in control of what I do, when I do it, how I do it. That feeling was so liberating. And it was just this incredible sense of freedom because I just felt like, now I'm in control of my own financial future, what I decide I'm going to do. I'm going to, it's me. It's been that way in my life ever since. And see, people they're afraid to make that jump. They're afraid to make that transition from this, what appears security of a paycheck, to the unsecurity of like, well, now I got to go out there and do my own thing. I got to, if I don't perform, I don't get paid. And most people don't have to take the route that I did. You can start doing this thing over here while still keeping your foot over here as well and having an income come in. But I'll tell you what, when you start really looking inside yourself and not looking to somebody else to take care of me, to somebody else to level the playing field for me and even things out and take from these rich people over here and give to the poor. And quite honestly, I will tell you, I know some very wealthy people, and I also know, because of personal experience, that they are some of the most generous, giving people that you ever meet. And from the standpoint of somebody who's looking up at that and going, and all that we see in the media about this whole thing of leveling the playing field, taking from the wealthy, make them pay their share, and even this out and give to the poor, they're already doing it on their own accord. And if you cripple them from doing that, and I don't even consider myself in that class of the ultra wealthy, but I have friends who are, and I see what they're doing. And they're already doing that, but now to tax them and to take more from them and give to the poor, the fact is it's not going to change anything. It will not level the playing field, because until somebody makes up their own mind that they're going to take care of their, and get an education and figure out how I can provide value to other people and in turn get compensated for that. And the better I get at doing that, the better I get at leveraging my efforts, I can increase my income. And the more value I deliver to the more people I deliver that value to, I become worth more. And that's how wealth is created. It's not created by taking from the rich and giving to the poor. What is, I mean, when I was in that spot of not having the money, I just started looking at like, what can I do? How can I be of service, be of value to somebody else, and in turn get compensated for doing that? So I had saved up this money. So I would have been 24 years old. And we were getting ready, we had just untied lines from the fishing dock in Dutch Harbor, getting ready to go back out to sea on another fishing trip. And somebody, one of the guys had bought a video camera, and this was before Deadliest Catch ever was on, TV or anything like that. But we thought, our friends wanted to know what it was like being a fisherman. And so we were filming, and we were sitting around the stateroom talking about what it was like to be a fisherman. And I can still remember, I've got this on a VHS tape to this day, me at 24 years old talking about, you know what, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not doing this forever. I'm here long enough to get money together so I can start my own business. And once I've got that money together, I'm out of here. And when I finally did, have that near-death experience where I was like, okay, you know what, this is it. This is my sign that I'm done. I'm going to take what money I've got. And quite honestly, I thought I was in pretty good shape. I mean, like $200,000 I'd saved up. I'm thinking like, wow, you're going to have this made. And the reality is, first, the big reality, I got home. And keep in mind that when I got home from that fishing trip, I was married at the time to my first wife, and I did not tell her about what had happened on that boat because I didn't want her being worried about me up there, something that she had no control over. So I didn't say anything. And when I came home from that fishing trip with no front teeth, and she picked me up from the airport, she gasped when she saw me. And she, oh my gosh, what happened? What happened? And I told her the whole story. And I also told her that I'm done. No more fishing. I'm done with this. And we've saved up all this money. I'm going to start my own business. That scared the crap out of my wife, because she liked the lifestyle that we had come accustomed to living, the lifestyle that me being a fisherman was able to provide for us. And she was not supportive of this idea of me starting a business. She was not, in fact, she flat out told me, she goes, Kevin, she goes, you are a fisherman. You will always be a fisherman, and you need to get your butt back up on that boat. And I was shocked by that. But I also knew that wasn't happening. And she gave me an ultimatum that she goes, Kevin, if you're going to do this, I'm not staying with you. And she ended up filing for divorce and leaving me. That was a challenge for dang sure. But that would have been in 1996 that happened after I got off that boat. 95, ended 95 right at the end of the holidays there. 96, she left me. A couple months later, I did open the doors on that business. I ended up starting a carpet cleaning business. And quite honestly, I started that business because I had met this guy in Seattle who was in that business already, in the carpet cleaning industry. He made some good money. He was less than ethical about the way he handled his business, but I was like, if that guy can do that, then I can do that. And knowing what I know now, that is so not the reason to start a business. And a lot of people, I get it, because we want to take care of ourselves financially, but looking back now, it was totally the wrong reason, but yet it's the reason that most people make for getting into business, because they want to make money doing whatever it is that they're setting out to do. And that was my reason at the time. And so I opened the doors on this cleaning business. So like I said, I saved up $200,000 over my years of fishing in Alaska. I invested $80,000 just to open the doors on this business, because I had to buy a van and a big cleaning machine, equipment, supplies, all of that. And I did bootstrap it. Even though I had this money, I did not get a shop or anything like that. I did not rent shop space. I ran it right out of my home. And I would run ads in the local Valpak coupons or in the phone book, and I saw that everybody else in the industry, or what ads I saw out there, other people in the cleaning industry were advertising stuff like, I'll clean 3 rooms in a hall for $59.95, $59.95 or $69.95. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll run an ad that I'll clean 3 rooms in a hall, and I'll do it for $49.95, thinking that if I undercut everybody else, then I would get all the business. And it definitely worked. I got a lot of business. The challenge is that at doing it those low rock bottom prices, it was costing me more to go out and do the work than what I was bringing in. I was losing money every time I went out the door, but I didn't realize it just because I didn't have a basis of knowledge to even know what was going on. All I knew was like, gosh, how come I can't make any money? And this went on for about a year, and I went through my whole money that I had saved up. $200,000 within 12 months was completely gone, and I still was not making money in business. And gosh, I remember thinking to myself, gosh, maybe your ex-wife was right. Maybe you ain't cut out for this. Maybe you don't have what it takes. I mean, all kinds of stuff starts going through your head. At that point, I was the thought. I mean, when I thought, I was like, okay, if you didn't do this, Kev, what else would you do? And the only other thing that I knew that I could do to make income for myself at that time, yeah, I could go get a job somewhere doing something, maybe working, I don't know, Seattle at the time, lumber mill, whatever, but that wouldn't take care of me in the way that I'd been used to living. I'd have to take a serious dip in lifestyle, and the only other option would have been to go back to Alaska and go on a fishing boat again. And I absolutely did not want to do that. And I'm like, Kev, you've got to figure this out. And so that was when I was telling you, I was looking through a trade magazine for the industry. I found an article by this guy, Joe Polish, and in that article he was talking about, I can show you how to get more new clients in a month than you now get all year. And I was like, wow, that sounds very appealing to me. And he was offering this free report, so I mailed in the thing, I got his free report. I read through that, and I'm like, wow, this guy is talking about all the other stuff we've been talking about using your business to make an impact, about valuing yourself. All these other things that I'm like, wow, this sounds so good. And so I started working with him, got his help, turned that business around within 3 years. And that's when I really started to make some distinctions that I was like, you know what, Kevin, you're making money with this thing now. And because you got some help, and really all it came down to, I could have saved that whole $200,000. I could have saved myself a lot of heartache, a lot of grief, if I would have just got some help from somebody who's already been there and done that, and can just say, hey, Kev, here's all you need to do. Do this and this and this. And I'm like, I'm great at following instructions. And if you just tell me what to do, and you're somebody who I know has already been there and has already achieved what I want to do, by gosh, I'll follow you. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And that is such a simple thing to do, but yet most people follow people who are telling us to do this and that and the other thing, but yet they haven't experienced success at it themselves. And that's why this whole model of education is so broken, is because my daughter even is learning from somebody, learning about business from someone who has never owned a business. And most people going to college to study business, that's the situation. And so how can that possibly really work? How can, but if you follow the advice from somebody who's actually been there, done that, and say, Kev, you know what, I've done this, here's what I did. And you can follow my lead and do what I've done. And if you do that, then you're going to get the same kind of results as me. And that's exactly what Joe did for me, is he gave me that model to follow. And once I did that, sure enough, I got the results. The business started growing, we started making a lot more money, but that's when I discovered this whole idea of that, and discovered that, Kev, you're in the wrong business, because what I really loved, I loved, there was a lot of things about that business that I really liked. I liked meeting with my clients. I liked the expression on their face. I liked seeing how happy they were when we went in and did the work for them in their home and made their carpets look like new, all that. I mean, I loved that, but the actual act of me being the one out there cleaning the carpets, gosh, I hated that. Another thing I didn't like and was not good at was, for me personally, having a business with employees. And that was a growing business, and that was part of what needed to be done in that business to grow that, but I was not a good manager of employees. And I had friends tell me, well, gosh, Kev, you learned all the other stuff. You learned the marketing, you learned how to make the business successful. Just learn how to become a better manager of employees. But I'm like, yeah, I could do that, but I don't want to. And so when I really started looking at that, and that's when I told you I started making out that list of, well, gosh, Kev, what do you want? And once I got clear on what I did want, now we could start moving in that direction. And that's when amazing things start to happen. And going from a point of I'm getting into business because I want to make a buck to getting into business instead because I want to make a difference. I want to impact people's lives in a positive way. I want to make a difference in this world by doing what I do. Whatever that thing is, that doesn't matter. It can be whatever. But when you have that as your focus, and you just want to, you do it from a place of integrity, of just being your authentic self, that you don't have to become. We already possess everything we need. We are everything we need already. We might need a little bit of education, a little bit of direction, but we don't have to become, we don't have to say, well, gosh, that rich guy or that rich guy, if I was like them, then I could be successful. Then I could make money. And what you see in them, and whatever it is that you see it from an outsider's perspective. You have no idea what's really going on in their world, what they're really dealing with. But we have it within our ability, within our power to do whatever we want to do. And when we realize that, and when we really take our eyes off of ourselves and put our focus on truly wanting to help other people and serve them, and they know that, they are so attracted to us because that's so hard to find these days. It's so hard to find somebody who really cares about me. And when we find them, man, we just latch on because we want that. We want that kind of relationship in our life. We want that kind of connection. And that's the kind of thing that long-term relationships are made of, and long-term value is created, and that's how you get compensated. That's how you create wealth. So this film is so important because our educational system is broken. And I can actually have personal experience with this. I have a daughter right now who is 20 in her third year of college studying business. And the challenge is that she's studying business from one of her professors who has no business experience. And of course, nothing against him. He comes out of the corporate world, but he's sharing things with my daughter and telling her certain things about his experience and about how business runs. And me being an entrepreneur, my daughter came home one weekend from college questioning this because she's thinking, as her professor's telling this, she goes, my dad would never do that. And so we started talking about this, and I'm like, gosh, honey, is your professor is he an actual business owner? She goes, I don't know. I said, well, it sure would be nice to find out because it doesn't sound like he is. And come to find out, he's not. And the challenge is that our kids are going through an educational system that tells them to get a good education so that you can get out of high school and then go to college and further your education so that then you can get out of college and get a good job to make a great income. And the challenge is that we don't have to look anywhere but around us to see that that's not working. Look in your own life. Is that working? Now, I'll give you some contrast to this. I've got a 5-year-old son. And about 3 weeks ago, we're out driving around and he's in the back in his car seat. And out of the blue, he just says, Daddy, I know how you make money in your business. And I'm like, you do? Because quite honestly, I didn't think he really even understood exactly what I did in my business. And I'm like, how do I make money in my business, Brock? And he's like, Dad, all you do is you do good things for people. And the more people you do good things for, the more money you make. And I'll tell you what, that was a profound statement coming from a 5-year-old boy. And at 5 years old, just because of his experience, just because of what he's seen at the level he's seen it at, he gets it. He totally gets this. And I can only imagine where he's going to go in his life because he's surrounded by this. And for you, I trust this film will open your eyes, just like my 5-year-old son Brock has had his eyes opened, and let you realize the opportunity that is really there for you to make an impact in the people's lives that you're going to serve. Because that's how wealth is really created.
So my name is Erico and I'm an entrepreneur. In fact, I'm an online entrepreneur today. I currently own 4 companies. The way I started, I always dreamed to be an entrepreneur, but I happened to not believe I could be one. My mom and dad, they came from my dad came from a relatively poor background, so he wasn't like in need of food, but he has to sell door to door salad or tomatoes to make a living, because my grandfather died when he was very young, and my grandmother had 9 kids and stuff. So he wasn't that wealthy. He was in fact borderline. And my mom, she was a little bit more wealthy. Her grandfather was the mayor of the small city they lived. But what happens is, after my grandmother died of cancer, he lost everything. He went into a lending money business and he lost everything. When he died, he wasn't even the owner of his own house when he passed away. So what happens is, my mom and dad, they actually spent everything in my education. So basically what happens is, they were living in a state called Minas Gerais in Brazil, and the new capital of Brazil was being built. So people would go 1,000 kilometers to Brasilia, and they could have a job. So finally they got a job in the government at that time. And all the money they spent was invested on my education of myself and my 3 brothers. So that as they always say, we will never have the same sort of necessities or the same sort of needs that they went through. And so far we did well. I did the best grades. I had the best grades I could. In fact, I got a job in Germany at the time, later in London. And I started to work for the investment banking industry as a contractor. So I would help traders price bonds, governmental bonds. So I was there. I was less than 30 years old. I was earning, give or take, because of bonuses and variable income. You could say that I was about, earning $200,000 US dollars a year, give or take. And I was completely miserable. I would wake up, after 10 years doing that, I wake up at 7 o'clock on Monday. I would hate it. And I would go to bed, finish my job at 7 o'clock, and I would hate it. I was surviving. It was giving good money. I didn't have children, but it wasn't make me happy. So I went, and suddenly, in a move of kind of desperation, I quit. It was 2009, in the middle of the big crisis in banking, and I quit. I quit in a dream of actually starting a business that I didn't know when, but we have a saying that I threw my hat on the other side of the wall, and then I will figure out how to get it. Well, it turned out to be that being an entrepreneur was not the same as being a professional in the investment banking industry. So I thought I would just have an idea, and that idea would do good, and it would work out. So after I did it, and I think I remember I was around 82 kilos. 3 months later, I was 72 kilos because it wasn't working. I couldn't find the right ideas. Suddenly, I find the idea. I would start a business online. and that's when I became an entrepreneur. And this journey from, it was then back in 2010 that in August I start up my first business online, and until December it wasn't working really well. Then suddenly I kind of figure out how to do it, and that one business became really successful. And later on I used that my knowledge of I could do with one business, I started another one, and here I am in my last business. I am actually teaching people this other business they go through, but in this last business I actually teach people in Brazil how to actually start up a business online, so that they get probably results faster than I had to do when I began. Okay, I have there is one where I teach people how to start up a business online, or it teaches also current entrepreneurs how to go to the next level, learning how to build audiences, creating value, and building a client base. Then I have a website business what creates with an easy way to create websites for businesses, and the kind of pages they need to attract an audience. Then I have another business which it takes care of the email marketing of this business, so they can communicate and create a relationship. So it's called a permission-based email marketing, where the clients, they opt in to receive information about a specific topic they want to learn, and they give the permission for the company to mail them until they say, no, I don't want anymore. So in this second business, they build lists. And with these lists, they build, whenever they have content and stuff, they can send and they can check what kind of response there is. And I still have my real estate, my first real estate, where I teach real estate investors how to buy property below market value. So how to buy property below market value at foreclosures. And the foreclosure market in Brazil was very decentralized, and no one was organizing it. So I teach people how to buy property at a better price in foreclosures. Well, basically, I had this idea because, first of all, I had to figure out something. So we have a saying that you either running, you can run fast, but you have a Rottweiler, you run even faster. And I had the Rottweiler because if I didn't make it at that time, I would have to go back to banking, which I wouldn't die of hunger, but I would not be a good to be back. So basically, I took an idea. At the time, I was buying real estate in Europe, and the real estate in Europe was down. So I started buying real estate in Brazil. In fact, I was buying, and then I actually took an idea of a website, of a service that I missed in England, that I had in England, but that was not in Brazil. So there are several, technology or information or service gaps that we have here in the US. You have here, in the UK, but you don't have it in Brazil. So I said, well, I'm gonna start it. And it was a great idea. And I started, and I thought it was the best service ever, and didn't sell it in the first place. You have always the dream that you're going to put a product out there, people will love it, they will share it, and everything will be all right. And I just knew, for example, that I didn't know how to market my product, and my product would not market itself. And then I decided, okay, great, I have to come to the US and learn from the people who actually know how to market somehow, and that's where I get this knowledge and start applying to my business and turning around until I found a way to make it actually work. Basically, I learned how to build an audience. I believe that I had to create a product, it would be there, and people would somehow find it, somehow love it, somehow share it. And in fact, what I learned that I needed to build an audience, and in fact an audience of prospects, of people that are good candidates who my product could serve. And I didn't know how to build this audience. So the first thing I learned in this quest was to build an audience. And how do you build an audience for a particular product? By giving valuable stuff for free. So there was, and I wasn't aware of that, but you know, by giving some valuable stuff for free, you would attract potential people, potential buyers for the product. But then it comes, what is value right now? And then I further learned that one of the greatest things that have more value in this current time we live is good information. So we're living in a life that we are full of problems, not in a sense of full of challenges of problems. And by providing information that somehow help people overcome some of these problems, attract people, and then you provide value, you provide good information that help people even if they don't buy it, and then with that, you create a sort of a relationship. They start trusting you. And it's much easier for someone who actually have business with someone that they trust. Then when you offer a potential possibility of them buying something, you have a much better possibility that they will buy. So that was the inversion. Before, I believed you create a product, they will come. I mean, somehow they will come. Show the product, buy my product, my product is good. Look, it's better than this, it's better than that. And in fact, it's just a centristic focus of look at how good I am. And the other approach was, hey, wait a minute, there's something that I know, which is information that has value, that I can provide you for free. And I can give you an experience of how it's actually to be around me. And then later, I would do a sequence or a launch for a particular product, and that launch would work. I mean, for me, if I can consider myself wealthy, I actually think more about a 360 view. For example, I mean, for me, spiritually, I think it's having a good relationship with my family, having a good relationship with my clients. Like, I believe wealth is a little bit of energy as well. So I believe I relate it to positive things. It's just positives, like energy with my clients. So if I get, for example, I have an opportunity to see a client just posting a testimonial saying, hey, what a good product you have, I feel wealthy as such. Even though that's not tangible asset or cash in the bank, but I believe that it builds up. I believe, so I associate wealth with positivity. And there's the material positivity, there's the maybe energetic positivity, maybe, the inner happiness positivity, yeah. Yeah, I don't have the stats, but I believe that's even worse, because from a witness perspective, I mean, it seems to be that the gap is even worse. Well, for example, I would be more concerned about my security in Brazil than I'm here, and I think when you're concerned about the security, it's because someone has to last. There's a lot of more than that, right? There's a social thing. There is, but yeah, so I can see people on a much lesser level. I have the impression that I can see people on a much lesser level in Brazil than I can see here. In fact, and the rich, I believe, I mean, the wealthy, they probably, I cannot compare because it's just difficult to see, but yeah, so definitely. There was one time when I was doing some, there was a priest from Italy that was doing some good work in a favela nearby Goiânia, and I was there with my wife because somehow her dad was inside this project. So it was the first time I actually saw a favela from inside. So yeah, it is organically built, and sometimes I have a feeling, for example, in Brasilia itself, all around it starts to become very, very much favelas, because people from the northeast, where the land is drier, they would come to Brasilia. because there was, there was land being distributed, right? If you see Brasilia, which is the city I was born, is the capital, there's surrounded by this. And where you go in places like Rio, the favelas are inside the city, inside the mountains and stuff. And in São Paulo, there was one day when I taking a taxi from the airport to my brother's house, and he was taking a GPS. And my brother lived in Morumbi, which was near a favela. But then one of the roads were closed, and then the taxi driver was following a GPS. And then we entered, that was 1 year ago, we entered a favela. And at that time, we didn't know what would happen, right? So the taxi driver was very scared at the time, and because he didn't know what happened. And you cannot just turn around, because there is no streets in a favela. So you go and there is no roads, they were not planned. And then you go and you just cannot go back. And the more we went, the more we got lost. Was with my wife and my son. So we got to experience what was that. And we have a sense that everyone knew that we were not from there. And I had a sense of fear because of all the things I actually saw in the movies as well. And suddenly we saw a police car and said, "Hey, we are lost, can you show us the way?" And he said, "Okay, I actually will show the way." And then we followed him and he showed us the way. And after that, he stopped us. He said, "Oh, thank you very much." He said, "Oh, you guys are very, very lucky. So be careful." So that's when there was a police saying to me, "Oh well, be careful. You should watch out." So that's my experience of being in favelas as such. If you talk extremely in Brazil, there's a perceived high level of corruption. And when I say perceived, because I don't have actually the data to prove, but when you see like a bridge costing much more to be built there than it would be somewhere else. So basically, my belief is that we're not in a poor country anymore. I used to believe that we were like poor, and yet there's plenty of money everywhere. So I believe the money is very misused. Very misused. And if you think about solution and why, you get to know why. And I have my theories, and this is my thing. But the way of, if you do something wrong in Brazil until you get to prison, there's so many things you can do to drag on the process that you could spend the whole time. Our justice system is not as effective as the American one. Maybe the American one is not perfect, but there's certain stuff that you can do there legally, like by saying, "Okay, now I want to see, no, this is not right, so I'm going to consult another judge." And therefore, there's not as much punishment for people who actually do a lot of corruption. And therefore, the money is not used to education and health and stuff, and that brings poverty. So I think my opinion is that the number one reason why we're not better than we are, maybe we're not going to solve the problem, but it starts with a reform and the way people are judged when they steal millions and millions. And we have cases of people who actually, politicians who actually were proven to be using government money to himself. One of our presidents was impeached. I don't believe we have lack of money. I don't think the government has lack of money. I think it just doesn't operate in an efficient way to use that money to go further and have more schools and like social programs and stuff like that. When I tried to become an entrepreneur, when I was an entrepreneur and I was a kind of just buy-centric, I'm this great thing, I have this great product and please just buy it. I wasn't a successful entrepreneur. It wasn't until I began to understand that you should provide value, you should build a relationship, that I actually became a successful entrepreneur. And further on, I believe that I believe that contribution, I mean, one is just really happy when they start to contribute. And I remember that I lived in London at the time, and I have my company working in Brazil, and finally I could leave the bank, right? I left the bank and I could live anywhere in the world. So I just chose a nice city, I rent a flat nearby the beach, and I just did what everyone ever wanted to do. First thing, it's completely light that you can work with a laptop in the beach. No, the sand goes in, there's too much light and anything. You want to work in a place with fluorescent lights. But the thing what I felt a very empty space. You know, I have a company working well. I wasn't driving for hours, but I was really well. And I felt an empty space, and I tried to fill that empty space. And that, for me, the way of filling that empty space at the time when I found out is actually to contribute. So again, contribute. And the way I found it is contributing to help other entrepreneurs. In another level is contributing with charitable organization. Last year, which raised like $60,000 US for an organization called Fundação Edmilson, which is an ex-football player which helped children to get out of prostitution and have something, education and stuff like that. So contribution is important. And I believe, yes, entrepreneurship is one part of the solution. I remember when I was in the bank. Now I have 15 employees, and directly employees, and a lot of people which I'm helping to generate value as well. So I believe the small entrepreneur is a big part of the solution, because he actually not just take care of himself, he produces wealth for a lot of small other guys, and I think this helps a lot. So back in 2010, when I wasn't having results, I came to the US and learned from the best. If there is a way, I believe if you want to do something, if you had to fight Mike Tyson, you have to do it, the best way to do it is find someone who survived the fight and learn what he did. And that's why I came here. So I learned from Jeff Walker, for example, how to actually launch businesses. And then later I start teaching this to other entrepreneurs. And I teach this online because it has a broader audience. But once a year, the people who actually learn that, which is called the Product Launch Formula, they have the opportunity to come to a live event where they experience other people. They see results from other people so that they can inspire, so that they can believe in themselves, so that they can, if they not ignore, so if they can see, wow, they can do it, I can do it as well. And last year we have 750 people. And this, it's once a year, and this year we are probably gonna have, and I don't know right now, we're probably gonna have the biggest event of this kind. So we're shooting for 1,500 entrepreneurs, and yeah, so this is it. So we have an opportunity to experience people starting from scratch. There's two typical people going there. So there's a category about 40% of people who are starting from scratch, and they are building businesses online, right? And there is another category of people which probably they have some success or they have some business, but they wanna go a next level, and they wanna use the ability to build audiences, relationship, create value, and then sell as a tool to leverage their business. And there you'll be able to see them speaking about it, you'll be able to see what kind of transformation they went through. And we'll be able to network with them, and yeah.
To see the next episode in the Money Revealed series, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
My confidence in a dollar, particularly over COVID and the rate we've printed these and more rounds of trillions, $1 trillion packages of debt.